You guys, welcome to the podcast number 6. My name is Keinan Briggs, athlete, coach, and mentor. And just welcome back. It's another day to feel good, and etc. Today's podcast is one that has been popping up into my existence a lot now. And not only is it happening a lot, I'm seeing a lot of failure, and it's a lot more failure than success when it comes to this specific piece. And I'm trying to make sure that the parents, families, athletes all understand what's needed to make this very successful. Now, before we go into the topic, I want to say a big shout out and a thank you to a donation made by Juan Clayton. He's out of the 267 area code. I'm not sure what area that is, but much appreciated. Thank you. Every dollar does go a long way. And his comment was, "Coach, I got you." So I thank you. I really do appreciate you for that. And thank you so much. All right. So today's conversation podcast is about club sports. And it's the club sports prison. Now, what I mean by this is not just that it's holding kids back, but that it's holding kids back in the realms of learning, development. It's helping some kids get better and get stronger and faster. However, the majority of kids are actually losing out. So I'm going to be talking about a few things. One is I'm going to define what the implications of being stuck in a club sport means, like what it is. I'm going to go over what causes this so-called prison, who deals with it, examples of what I see and how things play out, athlete management over the calendar year for that student athlete, the benefits of multiple sports, the benefits of a conditioning season, and then recap with some solutions that could help you guys as athletes, families, and etc. All right, so first, defining what do I mean? All right, so when you sign up for a club sport, let's just use volleyball. You are contractually involved in this agreement where you're signed up for the whole year. Now, you sign this contract, you're able to pay monthly or quarterly or in installments, but you're having to make sure that you continuously pay. And if you were to ever take a break, let's say you go on a vacation, or let's say your athlete is just tired and they want to take a season off, that's fine, you can. However, that team still needs its players to play the game. So now your son or daughter is off the team per se, and they have to earn their position back. So one, if I'm paying X amount of dollars per season and you're not even using this product, you're going to play. You're going to go to practice. You're going to do some things because I'm paying money for it. And I'm paying a lot of money for it. But also, what if an all-star kid comes in and takes your spot and you end up being the backup? Then what? Now you're not starting? These things come into play, and that's the implication that's happening when it comes down to being stuck within a sport. And it's implied that you have to continue playing and touching the ball, and and if you don't, you're going to be out of shape, when that's not really the case. So the main causes for this so-called prison is just fear that you're not going to play, fear that their athlete may not be as good when they get back to their sport, or just the fear that I may not have enough money because I got to pay for this sport even when my athlete isn't using it. So who deals with this actual issue? For me, the main sports that deal with it are, number one, girls volleyball. The other sport would be soccer. And then obviously now with the 7-on-7 and combine training aspect of football is football. So let's first start with girls volleyball. When it comes to girls volleyball, the high school season is in the fall. They play their games, they do all that stuff. Then right after that, I believe it's the winter season is when they ramp up and they get into their tournament season. However, there are tournaments heavy in the winter. There are tournaments heavy in the spring, and also a lot of tournaments in the summer. So when it comes down to training and playing, they're practicing 2 to 3 times a week, and they're playing games 4 to 5 or just multiple games on the weekends. Now, the issue with this is they're playing all the time. And when they play all the time, they're never really getting the rest. They're never really getting the training aspect of it. And if they're not getting the training aspect of it, a parent will then reach out and go get a private trainer. When they get a private trainer, that trainer is working on hitting skills, passing, etc. These are all things they're already doing within their sport. So that's where the concept of overtraining kind of comes in. And it's an issue because, with volleyball, it's a non-contact sport, and there are a lot of knee issues that are happening. And my question is, if there's no contact, why are we having adult injuries happening? And it's simply because of the kids start early and they play for a lot of games. They play a lot. And by the end of a season, when you add in the high school season where they're playing 2 games a week, then you add in 4 to 5 games a week when it comes to the club season, they're getting a lot of reps of game time. And if your athlete is good, it's now going to come down to your athlete has to play a lot and just a lot of reps, a lot of game times. So the focus is to balance out how do we keep our athlete safe, how do we keep our athlete injury free, and how do we keep our athlete consistently developing. What does that take? What does that need? And playing every single day isn't actually what makes that happen. Because when you look at a professional athlete, they don't play all the time. They have their seasons where they're in season, their seasons when they're off season. When they're off season, they're working on general training and etc., which I will go into later throughout this podcast. Now let's go into soccer. The number one injury for soccer players when it comes to girls is a blown out knee. And the most cases that it happens is when an athlete is simply changing directions, not from contact. Number one is football. But obviously that makes sense because people are trying to rip people's heads off. But soccer is not as violent, even though it can be when you look at these age groups and professional level sports. But the reason why these athletes are having these injuries is because when you're playing soccer, you're having to turn your foot outwards to pass the ball. There are certain positions your foot needs to be in when you're dribbling, passing, and etc., and kicking and so on. Well, there's a lot of passing within the sport, and within that sport of your foot being turned out, that actually pinpoints the VMO. The VMO happens to be overworked when it comes down to usage. And if an athlete isn't getting a complete balance of training in both directions, strength training, development, coordination skills, then what happens is the VMO becomes overworked. So now when the athlete cuts and moves, the knee doesn't track and align correctly. All of a sudden, at your 10,000th hour, when you become a professional considered in this sport, let's say you started at 6 years old for this sport, all of a sudden now you're 16, 17, boom, blown out knee because you've been doing things the incorrect way this whole time. And I hate seeing these injuries. I hate seeing athletes that are 15, 16 with that nice little scar that's on their knee, and it's a problem. So this conversation right here is just how do we fix it? And the next part, when we talk about the calendar season of training, I'll kind of go through the ins and outs of how to improve that, how to make it better, how to make it a little bit more safe. But again, you have the soccer season, which is in the fall, or check that, which is in the winter. Then you have your tournament season, which is the spring and summer. They do say we're going to go lighter during that part of the season. However, lighter just means one practice or only tournaments. But then again, you have those parents that are saying, well, if we don't have any practices, we're going to go hire a trainer. He or she is great. Let's get them going. And again, it's the same thing. Athletes using the same muscles over and over and over again, which causes situations which are very serious. The last thing is football. Now you have a huge business that is built, and it's the 7-on-7. It's the passing leagues. It's not football. It's a passing league. It's touch football. That's what they're playing, and it's glorified. It's a glorified touch football league. There's nothing wrong with it. It's fun. It's very fun. However, the misconception is, I'm going to get a scholarship because I was in this passing league. There's going to be coaches there, all these things. You get a scholarship from playing football, not touch football. You can't really evaluate a person playing flag football or touch football and figure out how they really play. I was a receiver and a quarterback growing up playing football. When you're a quarterback and you have no pressure and there's no lineman in front of you and you're pretty much held on no clock, you're just backing up and throwing the ball. If you're a DB, it's you and half the field. You have no safety help. You have no pressure from the lineman. It's just you and one of the fastest receivers in the state or region, and you're expected to guard and shut that person down. It's not football. It's not fair. It's just a sport that's helping you have fun. And it's glorified and there's cameras there. And so if you love football, play it. Enjoy it. But if your goal is to develop and get better, then my suggestion is make sure you're following a specific calendar which helps you develop, get stronger, get faster, etc. One huge thing is if you're only doing football only, nothing else, then make sure your calendar is set correctly. If you don't have a set correct calendar, then you're at a huge disadvantage because the athletes that are being recruited out of college are the ones who played multiple sports in high school. If you're not playing a multiple sport, you're already outside of that 1% that has the opportunity to go pro in the sport of football. So you don't have to necessarily follow what everyone else is doing. Just make sure you're looking at everything and weighing your options. If you're only playing football, make sure your calendar is set best to make you the best student athlete as possible. Now, when it comes down to the examples of, let me go back for a second. The football combine season starts in the spring. For those high school football teams that are just average teams, they go through November, I think, November or so. The athletes who do really well go even further. They go even, a little bit further, depending on if you're doing college stuff. But pretty much October, November is when the season goes through. Then you have a few weeks off, and then you're back into it again. Then once you do that passing league, that starts in the spring. Then you have your summertime. And you have spring football. Then you have your summertime camps. Then you have your season starting. So when you really think about it, you're going from January all the way through November with football. That's a long calendar, and a lot of things overlap. So just make sure you're understanding what's going on. Now, when it comes to the training examples, how a calendar season should look, my thing is, if you're doing multiple sports, please just do one sport at a time when that sport is in season. What that means is I have a few athletes that are diehard volleyball and they're diehard track and field, and they want to do both. I support it. Now, you're going to have to choose between club and high school volleyball. The reason for it is when you choose to do high school volleyball and club and track, you're now doing 3 sports, which is fine. However, the 3 sports do overlap. Club volleyball is during track and field season. So now you're going to have a hard time balancing out track and field, which requires you to be at your best ability, fresh and rested and recovered, and practice 2 times a week or 1 time a week, with volleyball. Then when you don't have Saturday track meets, or if you do have Saturday track meets, you're going to a tournament for volleyball, which makes you play 2, 3, 4, 5, 17 volleyball games in a weekend. So that's where your athlete is doing way too much. And you're not going to get the best benefit of improvement because you're always doing something. One quick little side note is whenever you are weight training, say you're lifting weights, and you decide to, go hard. When you're sore, your body is actually rebuilding itself to handle whatever it is that you did to it, whatever stress you put on it. When it recovers itself, it actually recovers itself and builds the muscle to be stronger to handle that specific workout. So if you're working out with 3 different sports and never have the days to rest, the muscles can never actually develop and strengthen itself for whatever you did to it. You have to actually schedule in rest. So when you're doing two sports in one season, there's no time for rest. Even if you take your son or daughter to this chirotherapy or PT or whatever it is, or icing, that stuff is great. But physically having a day of rest or 2 days of rest is very important, especially when it comes down to track and field. All right. So if you're doing volleyball and track, my suggestion is this. Choose between the sports, whether it's club or high school volleyball. Let's say you choose to do high school volleyball because you do it for fun and you enjoy your friends. Perfect. You're going to use the summer for volleyball development and training. Then you're going to do the fall for volleyball. When volleyball is done, you stop volleyball. Then you go into track and field specific training. You do all the off season. You train the muscles to be working for track and field. You get those muscles to fire correctly and get stronger. Then in the spring, you play or you do track and field. When that is done, your cycle starts over. That's it. Really simple. If you're in football, be in football. I don't know many people that do multiple sports with football because it's physically so demanding. You do football, it ends in the late fall, early winter. Again, you do your specific training for off season when it comes to your development for track. Then you simply run track. You're not going to lose a position by doing track. You're actually going to get more benefit out of doing track. Why? Because if you say, Coach, I run a 4.40, I'm fast. Well, coaches want to see that. A 4.40 is like a 10.9 or a 10-second high 100-meter dash. Prove it to me. If you run a solid 200, or if you're a hurdler, look at Ezekiel Elliott. He's super athletic. Why? Because he's just a good athlete, and he showed it by doing these other sports. He was a state champion in multiple events in track and field. Julio Jones, same thing. Adoree Jackson, a world-class long jumper. Marquise Goodwin, world-class long jumper. Track and field as a sport is all about your physical body being at its peak. Every other team sport isn't about your physical body being at its peak. It's about playing the sport. And you can actually be at 60% with a bad knee, a pulled hamstring, and still have one of the best games of your life. You will never have the best marks of your life in a track meet with a pulled hamstring or a tweaked ankle. It doesn't work that way. They're separate. Track and field teaches the value of the physical body and how it should be and how the development of it works. However, team sports, it has that piece in it. However, it can be hidden by having another athlete that can take that load for you. So I'm not saying track and field is the only sport. It's just the element of training is needed for your sport to get better. If you're doing soccer, I had a couple of soccer athletes, same concept. Just do, if you're doing your winter sport, which is soccer, do fall training and then winter soccer. Once winter soccer is over, then you have to figure out how to get in shape for track and field if you choose to do that. So if you have any further specific questions with how to balance your schedule out, I offer a service which I kind of guide you through the pros and cons of whatever your choice is. Personally, I don't care what your choice is. Your choice is your choice, and I wish you the best. However, you need to know what your choice is going to lead to and how it looks on a calendar. Sometimes you don't know how much your son or daughter does on a weekly until you actually draw it out on paper. When you figure out that they wake up at 6 a.m., go to school till 3, they have practice for their team, then they have a 2-hour break to do homework, then they show up to their club practice or their private trainer, and you realize my son or daughter is doing 35 hours of activities for sports on top of school and studying. And if they're 16, 17, now you add in an hour or two of social life. It's a lot. And those stresses, even though your athlete can handle it, it gets worse in college. Now you add in study hall. Now you add in traveling. They'll be traveling out of state. They'll be spending days or weekends in certain states and hotels doing homework. Weight training is now a specific part of schooling. They're not going to have a higher load of, studies. And it gets worse. So if they're doing many, many hours now in high school, they're going to burn out because they don't want to do the extra work. Okay, now let's try to make this a little bit more positive. So, the athlete 4 seasons are like this. If you are a dedicated football athlete and that's all you do, you should be doing the winter season off and rest. The spring season, let's get away from the 7-on-7 stuff and just maybe work with a trainer. Do weight training, get all the motor skills developed. Any flaws you have, work on those things. Then in the summer, that's where you're getting into you're obviously getting into your weight training harder now because it's the off season. You're getting into football specific stuff. You now have 2-a-days when it comes to earlier part of the early fall, late summer. Then you play your sport. But you want to give yourself 4 to 6 weeks off. Just be off. Go be a kid. Go enjoy life. Go get into trouble. Don't get arrested. Just don't get in trouble, but have fun and enjoy your friends and so on. Very important that you add that piece in. If you're in diehard soccer, then focus on your season. If you're diehard soccer and you want to do club and your high school season, that's fine. But make sure that let's say the summer or late summer or winter is a season where you only do weight training and conditioning. Get on a track. Hire a conditioning coach. When a volleyball athlete is in running condition, that athlete will never get tired on the court. Why? Because they take 4 steps maximum. The court literally is 4 steps across. I'm exaggerating, but you get what I'm saying. All right? When you are in the physical shape, you're going to be that much better. When you are working on your knee alignment and learning how to load weight, working on ankle stability, you're going to get so much more done. Side note, a lot of coaches for volleyball suggest that their blockers wear ankle braces. What this does is it helps stabilize their ankles whenever they land on athletes' ankles or feet. They don't have any damage. Here's the issue with that. The issue is when you take away the movement and mobility of your ankle, then it has to move on to the next joint. You stiffen up the ankle, which helps you stabilize your body, and you put the next joint under that same pressure, which is your knee. Your knee isn't designed to do all the motions and stabilize as the ankle is. Do me a favor while you're listening to this, hoping you're not driving, but move your ankle in every direction possible. Up, down, left, right, forward, back, twist it, turn it, all those things. Then pause for a second. Then move your knee in the exact same directions. You're limited. So if you take away the balance and stability from your ankle joint, you're putting that onto your knee. That causes problems. So now when you end up stepping on a toe or an ankle or a foot, your knee is what supports that and helps stabilize. Thus, if you see your athlete and their knees are touching, or when they jump, their knees bow in, that's called valgus knee, that's an issue. It needs to be fixed. You fix it by simply taking away the sport for a second, maybe one part of the season, and just focus on ankle stability, ankle balance, ankle range of motion, hip mobility, strength, squats, bench press, all these things. Get you a trainer that understands the basics of volleyball. Then you're set. Okay? Same concept for soccer. You can always do the drills, you can always do the training, you can always do all these things without having to physically play. And you're not going to lose anything by not playing. You may be a little bit rusty when you come back into season. However, you should be doing the basics of learning how to start, learning how to stop, learning how to change directions, learning how to decelerate, learning how to accelerate. All these things are very important. I don't just mean general soccer fitness. I mean weight training that helps you learn these motions. Functional movement, functional motor skills are very important and key to your success on the field. This is going to keep your athletes safe. Now, the benefits of doing multiple sports, I kind of went through over before. It's a way to cross train. It's a way to get your body developed in all areas, in all directions. Again, track and volleyball are great. They're opposite parts of the seasons. You also have time to spend the preseason to develop. And also, volleyball players make great hurdlers. They make great 300-meter runners because their natural strength. They make for great high jumpers, triple jumpers, and also for those who aren't as fearless, they make great pole vaulters. If you are considering going to college for both sports, you're maxed out at your actual development each sport because you're able to do a full preseason. Then when you get into it, you can actually ask for a track and field and a volleyball scholarship. These things are possible. It's important to understand multiple sports is of value, especially if you can bring a value for two sports to a team. They may only have half scholarship available, but if you add two halves, you got a full right there. Also, talked about earlier, football, how it has, the people who are being recruited to the NFL and drafted, even high school athletes. College coaches are looking for multiple sport athletes. And if you're not doing multiple sports, you need to have a calendar that fits and get you trained as if you're doing multiple sports. And also just the benefit of a conditioning season, how I talked about with girls in the having the fall to condition. This part is very important. It's just preparing you for what's going to happen. So your muscles are ready to go. If you throw an athlete in from soccer and throw them right into track sprint workouts, you're going to see quad injuries. You're going to see shin splint issues. You're going to see a lot of issues that are happening, not because the athlete is just getting injured. It's because the athlete's body isn't conditioned yet. So it's very important that you walk before you start running, or you crawl before you walk, whatever cliche metaphor that is. So just to recap this whole podcast is, again, I said it before, but go get professional advice on how to plan your calendar season for your athlete. Parents will always do things out of love. They say, my kid wants to get better. We're going to go hire a trainer because they're not a starter on their club team. That's fine. However, you getting a trainer just put that kid with 16 hours of training during the week on top of their games. You added in 8 more hours of training per week. It's not the best benefit. How do we make it more effective? So getting professional advice is very important. I am a resource. If you are interested, you can go to KeinanBriggs.com and click on resources, and you'll see some ideas about maybe phone calls, some ideas about coaching. I do offer phone calls for an hour and 30 minutes sessions that are just kind of like this. You ask me what's going on, how to get your kid recruited. I will be able to give you some great advice. And if I don't have all the answers, someone else will. It's very important that you take the time into learning about the sport, learning about the progression from college to high school, or most importantly, the progression from youth sports into high school. Choosing the best high school, choosing the best college, choosing, what club teams are going to work. The best club teams sometimes are the club teams where your son or daughter goes on to, and they're not the starter. That may be more of a benefit because it forces them to deal with adversity. It forces them to work on the skills that helps them get better. It may force them to learn how to be a follower just for one season. All these things are very important to think about and to take into consideration. All right, so that's pretty much it. Again, if you're enjoying these podcasts, if you see them as a value, please be like Juan, who donated, some money. All donations, no matter what the amount, is very helpful, and it goes a long way. So thank you for listening. I will see you guys next time. Bye.